Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, ElectricEye, Extending Your AWS Security Posture Management with Open Source. My name is Carol Auth of SANS. Today's featured speaker is Jonathan Rowell, currently the Chief Information Security Officer for Lightspin. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenter, please enter them into the questions window at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Carol, for the introduction, and thank you to SANS for allowing me time to speak today. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're watching this from. Hope everybody's doing great. Like Carol said, I'm Jonathan Rowell. I'm currently the Chief Information Security Officer for Lightspin, an Israeli security startup dealing with graphs and all sorts of cool stuff, but I won't sell to you, I promise. I'm also a board advisor for DisruptOps, a Fireman company, and for ByteCheck. And we'll go ahead and get started today. Hopefully, we'll keep the slideshow damage to a minimum. We'll jump into a couple different demos, and hopefully people have some cool questions for me, and then we can just discuss. So give me a second while I get my stopwatch up to make sure I don't talk too much, and we'll go ahead and get started. So first, what's OSS, right? What's open source software or open source security? I'm pretty sure it's open source software. I could already hear people on Reddit be like, actually, but it's not to be confused with the Proto Special Operations Forces, the Office of Strategic Services from World War II. Unfortunately, open source software has yet to be able to teach people how to sabotage fascists and make things explode, but there are schools for that, but you won't learn that here. So what is open source software, right? It's typically free, and I put that asterisk there because, free is relative, right? And we won't get into a macroeconomics thing, but it's usually, it's open source, it's free to use, there's different licenses, and, in the startup realm and the M&A realm, there's a whole lot of, kind of scuttlebutt that goes around open source licenses. Typically the good ones, right, are Apache 2.0 or MIT, and some people don't like the GPL v3 and other copyleft licenses, but it's community driven. It could be a pet project, right? I mean, ElectricEye honestly started as a pet project that I worked on when I was working with AWS Security Hub, and I know I put that it solves for one or more capabilities within security. Obviously, this webinar is focused on security use cases, but open source is really everywhere. I mean, think of your favorite, even Amazon cloud services, right? Things like Athena or Presto underneath. Things like, the glue crawlers, Elastic MapReduce, that's all part of the Hadoop ecosystem, HDFS, things like that. Amazon managed workloads for Apache Airflow is Apache Airflow. OpenSearch service is a fork. It used to be Open Distro for Elasticsearch. It used to be Elasticsearch and the whole license thing. We won't go there. So it's everywhere. But within the security space, notably, cloud security posture management is where a lot of, kind of the effort is focused in. I think everybody probably knows that Tony De La Fuente and Prowler. There's a ton other, projects within the CSPM space. ElectricEye is just one of them, and not even one of the newest ones. I mean, I think Microsoft and the team over there has came out with Cloud Katana, but there's also other projects, right? I think people may have heard of Wazoo, which is an open source EDR and FIM, file integrity monitoring tool. You have OSINT automation frameworks, right? Like Spiderfoot is a favorite one. Recon tools, Network Mapper, Nmap. Then you have things on the red team offensive security side, like Rhino Labs' Paku. You have application security testing things, like Bandit for Python SAST. You have Node.js, things like that. So there's all sorts of, different tools. And, that's really what open source is. And, I'm not the best open source advocate, right? So there's other things that go into it, but that's kind of the gist and line of the conversation. So why OSS? And again, going back to my lame joke about the Office of Strategic Services, it's not to be confused with, sabotaging Axis forces in World War II. Though, I'm not saying it would be pretty cool to run around the French countryside with some Comp B6 slung to you and a Thompson machine gun, blown up railroad tracks. It won't do that for you, but it might help you prevent the cyber equivalent of people blowing up your railroad tracks, if you get what I'm saying. But the most attractive reason why people even use open source software or open source security is that, well, it's free. And again, there's that asterisk, right? There's some assembly required. Not every project is created equally. Not every project documentation is created equally. And there's always things to do to actually make it work for your environment, whether it's bootstrapping it, installing extra requirements. Maybe it's an open source version like freemium of a commercial offering. So it's been neutered. And it can be end user friendly, right? Because at the end of the day, for the most part, it's other builders, other developers, engineers, architects, other enthusiasts who are building these tools. I tried to make ElectricEye really is simple and easy to use. Again, using Prowler, kind of my model. It's like I just want to be able to type in commands and it spit out security issues to me. But for using OSS as part of your security program, I mean, it's to quickly fill in a gap that that you have or that you think you might have, or to quickly iterate on testing. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're a new CISO, right? And it's like, I need to get inventory of everything that I have. I want to see just like at a glance, especially if you come from a startup that might not, have the funding or have all the tools. Maybe you're in a pre-seed round, or you could even be at a large Fortune 500. I mean, I've been in large firms where, the security posture is kind of like, ugh, and you need to get a grip on it quick. Or you could be, a consultant, an intern, just anything you want to find out, quick information, or to fill in the gap again, where you may not have economic means to do so. Let's take EDR and XDR for an example, right? Endpoint detection and response, or extended detection and response, I guess we're supposed to call it now. Not everybody could afford a CrowdStrike Falcon or M365 Defender, despite the fact that Microsoft, redid their plans. So you might want to go with a Wazoo. Not everybody could afford something like a Sneak, or like, well, it's not Twistlock anymore, technically, or like an Aqua Security. So you might go ahead with Trivy or an Encore or a ClairOS or something like that, right? But where I see, because I'm a business to customer CISO, right? So obviously try to sell Lightspin, and I talk to, customers and prospects who use it, and they have their own tooling, and some people use it in the bake off, right? It's like, hey, I want to take ElectricEye and compare it to, let's say, Lightspin, or compare it to a Prisma Cloud, or compare it to, another open source tool. You could use it as a standard for features, and I should have put an asterisk next to that as well, because, again, not every open source tool is created equal. Not all of them are going to be full featured, right? I mean, it's like comparing, I don't know, what's a good SaaS tool, right? Like I guess like a Sneak Code, right? To Bandit, where Bandit, yeah, it's free, it's a SaaS tool, it's awesome, but it's really going to tell you things that are wrong with like Django, and wrong with like a Flask server, which are things that you shouldn't have, wrong anyway. Or you could use it as a supplement or as an integrator. I think pretty much every commercial offering, specifically in the CSPM space, has APIs. They accept findings from other platforms. They put out findings to other platforms. Maybe you found that there's a gap within your commercial tool, and it's like, okay, this tool doesn't support this service, or it doesn't support this specific check that I want, that I need, for like a SOC 2 control, or that I need for a NIST control or something like that. So you just use it and then, push that stuff downstream, whether it's a SIM tool like a Splunk or a Sentinel, whether, it's a dashboarding tool like a Tableau or a Click or a QuickSight, or maybe you just push it into that platform properly. Those are not all the reasons you use it. Those are just, some simple ones, right? So again, open source software and CSPM. I think CSPM has the lowest barrier to entry, and this comes with developing your own tool, right? Just because there's an ElectricEye and a Prowler and a Packbot and a Cloud Custodian and a Cloud Katana doesn't mean that you could, not build your own. And I find it very easy to develop and very easy to iterate on. I mean, ElectricEye has 323 checks in my dev branch as of now. I forget how much I have in mainline, but it's all API driven, right? AWS is obviously, pretty well situated in the ecosystem, easy to use APIs, Boto 3, CLI, whatever, your poison is if you use Golang or Kotlin or Rust, if you're fancy like that. But it pretty much goes the same with other cloud providers, even, more, not traditional, but, something like a VMware Cloud, right? Even they have a way for you to interact with the resources. So CSPM has always been very easy to kind of get ahead, because you just query out a describe or a list API, and then you dump out, a JSON or an XML document, and then you just use some other library to parse it. And a lot of it's very Boolean, very static. It's like, are you encrypted? Yes or no? Do you have logging? Yes or no? Are you using TLS 1.2? Yes or no? Do you have TLS enabled? Yes or no? So it's very, very easy to use as an educational tool, right? Especially as we start to try to democratize and get, cybersecurity culture ingrained in other teams, whether it's DevOps, Cloud Center of Excellence, maybe just even traditional software development engineers, full stack people, sysops people, whatever it needs to be. It's like, hey, you could use this tool and it'll tell you that your stack, that your little piece of the pie, your little plane of existence, here's what's wrong. It'll find bad things fast. It'll also find annoying things fast. I think that's a distraction to an open source CSPM tool or just CSPM in general, but we'll get to that. But then also people still have a very compliant centric view of things as well. If you're in a regulated industry, right? Healthcare, banking, fintech, or insurance, or maybe you're in scope for, a HIPAA, or you work in the DoD or the intelligence community, and it's all about like FedRAMP or NIST or something like that. That might be another reason just to pull it off the shelf. Honestly, the question I ask myself, kind of rhetorically, and again, this is odd coming from, somebody who works for a vendor. It's like, why am I going to pay somebody to evaluate the stuff when I could just do it myself? Now, I do have to say that obviously, whether it's us or somebody else or another commercial offering, usually you're paying for, that infrastructure, the SaaS tool for support, for TAMs, for CSMs, for, nice dashboarding. So you don't have to pull out all the duct tape and bubble gum and all the, extensions, the Lambda functions, the event bridge, the Fargate containers, things like that for yourself. But again, if you're just getting started, why not use that? I already covered down on it's a crowded area. And I mean, it's getting more crowded by the day. I feel CSPM, if you think back, to 2017, 2018, right? Like who were the players out there then? I mean, there was Redlock, you had Evan and IO, and both those folks got bought by Palo Alto. I have a hard time thinking of like who else was around back then. And then obviously you had Prowler on the scene, Scoutbot, Scout Suite, or Scout 2. I forget what the original Scout was back then, but now everybody's getting into CSPM. It's like so ingrained, and that's where you see, kind of, it's almost like a security arms race. Now everybody, it's like the Cold War, right? Where, okay, we have, big bombers that can carry a lot of bombs, right? We have our B-52s or Stratofortresses, and it's like, hey, we need high altitude bombers. And then we need hypersonic high altitude bombers. So the Soviets are like, how about we build something to chase them? They built the Su-25, the Foxbat, and they made it out of like nickel plated stainless steel, and it was super heavy and ungainly. And it's like, oh, that thing can't maneuver. So let's just make something that'll fly underneath radar, right? And that's where the B-1 came from. So outside of the military analogy there, folks like application performance monitoring tools, right? Like Datadog, I think, is jumping into the CSPM space. CrowdStrike, I believe that they're slowly starting to get more into it as well. So it's kind of everywhere. And honestly, despite the fact that there's tons of commercial offerings, despite the fact that there's ElectricEye and other tools, it's an easy project to get started on your own. It's an awesome way to showcase your skills. I don't know who all is on the, thing right now. I see the participant numbers keep jumping up. But whether you've been in the industry for a while, whether you're just breaking in, building your own CSPM project might be a good way to showcase your skills, might be a good excuse to learn Python, might be a good excuse to learn, JQ and learn how to query things, whatever it needs to be. So just because there's a tool or a product already that already exists, doesn't mean that you can't take another stab at it on your own. So brief history for whenever I write my autobiography, unless one of you want to become my biographer. Just kidding, don't do that. So it was a desk side project when I was at AWS Security Hub. I think that's where a lot of people kind of know from where I'm from. I worked there for about 6 months when I was at AWS. And it's well known that underneath the covers of Security Hub, for the most part, right, wink, wink, is AWS Config. AWS Config is AWS's it's kind of their configuration management / CMDB tool, but they also have config rules that you could write. AWS provides them on their own. They're wrapped on top of Lambdas, and they perform that kind of like binary or conditional evaluation. So when Security Hub came about, it was to be a hub for all of your security findings. So we had integrations with GuardDuty, Inspector, Macy, and then now I think, Eli and his team support, 100+ integrations, which is awesome. And my thing was like, hey, why should we be reliant just on AWS config? How can we make checks that are faster? Obviously customers had the batch import findings API. They could build their own, sort of logic. And we did have folks from, bigger companies that were early adopters who did just that. They're like, okay, like we have a tool you have an integration for, cool, just build it ourselves. But I released it on my own, right? We AWS and open source and, code in that there's different rules there. So, it's not that Amazon owns it. So don't worry, if you're more of an Azure GCP fan, it's like, I don't want anything to do with those guys and gals. Don't worry about that. Though when I did release it at first, it was under GPL v3, which I think made a lot of people, kind of unwilling to give it a shot. And I reconsolidated and re-released it under Apache 2.0 a couple months back. The original builds were actually not even on Fargate. It was each auditor was a Lambda function. And I got rid of that idea really quick. Originally, all it ran on was Fargate, but the 2.0 version that was released in mid 2020 over the summer, or maybe even 2019, I get the dates mixed up with everything that's been going on. The folks from Disrupt Ops helped out a lot with that, rewrote and reconsolidated a lot of it into the CLI. So now you could run ElectricEye literally anywhere. I've gotten it running on a Greengrass IoT device, like on a Raspberry Pi. You can run it in Cloud Shell, Cloud9, Batch. You could run it on another place as long as you have Python, the requirements, and an AWS CLI. You could do it. Really, the main purpose though was I wanted to cover services that config did it. Config and Security Hub are very focused, and they have been bridging out a little bit, but like I'm talking like core vanilla services, right? Your cloud fronts, your S3 buckets, your AFS shares, your EBS volumes, EC2 instances, Lambda functions, and even those weren't there right away. But what if, you're using managed Kafka, or what if you're using RabbitMQ, or what if I'm using SQS in a weird way, or SNS or Kinesis, or what if I'm using Comprehend? What if I'm using Amazon Managed Blockchain because I love Hyperledger Fabric? There wasn't anywhere to turn there. And to be honest, there isn't anywhere to turn there really, even in the commercial space. And, I'm doing this just kind of on my own with a bunch of people who've contributed over the years and over the months. So it's like, hey, if those big folks aren't doing it, right, because they have their own market gap analysis and things like that, maybe it's a good reason to use it. And it was also kind of a glue for other services, right? I mean, there's more security services, AWS Resource Access Manager, IoT Device Defender, Trusted Advisor, Health, Shield, though Shield's integrated through Firewall Manager, but not directly, WAF, things like that aren't natively integrated. So I'm like, hey, I could write checks in the ElectricEye engine, so to speak, there I go. And, kind of glue it together so you get those findings in there. Though I guess the bragging point about it, it does have the largest coverage out of anybody. By a couple, by 100 or so. Tony's going to catch up to me eventually, Prowler, but for now, I'm sitting on the top of the mountain, but I do wish I had the amount of usage that he has out of his tool. And then, I kind of cheekily named everything an auditor, right? Because it's all like clipboard. It's like, okay, we're going to check all your stuff and spit out a bunch of findings at you. And I know that doesn't really encourage people to use it. It's like, well, I don't want 333 freaking services spat out at me. That's why a lot of people don't like CSPM. They want to move to more, contextual security products, more fusion things like CWPPs or CNAPs or whatever the latest kind of buzzwords out there are. But the concept behind ElectricEye is that every service, every like check bundle is called an auditor, and then everything underneath it's just called a check. And then why ElectricEye, right? So besides the fact that it supports a ton of findings and supports kind of, more unique services that you might not know to check, it could be used as a great discovery tool. Like I said, whether you're a new CISO, you're a new starter, you're an intern, or you just want to see what's kind of going on in your environment, you could run it in all your different accounts, different regions. And then you might pop a memory DB finding, you might pop a Redis finding, you might pop a Comprehend finding, you might pop a device defender finding. And be like, oh, wow, I didn't even know we were using that. And then other things I don't have listed on the slide. That's why I'm starting with them. If you're confused reading this and like, what is he talking about? It's supported in all 5 regions, yes, or 5 partitions. And yes, there's 5 of them. Now, Security Hub isn't in the secret or top secret partitions yet, ISO and ISO B, but I wrote things into there that'll account for that when it does make it there. but it supports GovCloud. It supports the China partition, obviously the commercial. I did have to change some things that were meant to catch if a specific service isn't in the region or in the partition you're in. So you might get a bunch of like, hey, this isn't supported in this region, stuff spat out at you in those other partitions. It's a native integration security hub. All the things are, pretty much adherent to the full ASFF. And I even threw extra fields that aren't used too much, like confidence, threat intel, malware, depending on the type of check. It integrates with SIMs relatively easily. I'm writing a native integration for Microsoft Sentinel. You could spit it out to JSON. You could spit it out to CSV, to Excel. You could do Parquet, but you'll have to do that one on your own because PyArrow is big and it's a pain to build into an Alpine container. You could send it to Mongo. You could send it to Postgres, RDS, DocumentDB, wherever you want. And then I also have a bunch of forwarders. So if you have ChatOps or ITSM processes you want to hook into, PagerDuty, Slack, Azure DevOps, Teams, Jira, I support those as well. And like I said, if you have Python, you just install a couple packages. If you have access to AWS credentials with the right permissions, you could just go ahead and get running. Bunch of checks, and then I mapped every single check into NIST-CSF. And then from there, NIST-CSF provides you 853 and ISO 27001, 2013 mappings. So, this isn't like, hey, you're going to pass this audit if you use that. It's more as a quick reference. I know CSF really, really well. And then I just took advantage of them. And then for the AICPA, the American something of certified professional auditors. So the body who's in charge of SOC, the TSCs, the trust service criteria, they have a mapping that maps in an SCSF. So I kind of did it backwards from there. And that's another reason, like if you have like this compliance focused thing, you just want to get a quick at a glance without, seeking the services of a professional auditing organization to, get that report issuance and get that attestation done for you. You could use it as well. And then with the CLI, you don't have to run every single check. It's not like you sit there and wait for the thing to scan. You could run a specific auditor, specific check against a specific service if you want to just check on something really, really quick. No pun intended. So it's like, hey, I want to make sure that everybody's using, TLS 1.2 forward secret ciphers on all my ALBs. You could do that. Or if it's like, hey, I want to make sure that everybody has object lock turned on or something, you could do that. Actually, I don't know if I support object lock. I should probably know that. So that's kind of my bad sales pitch on my tool. That was a little nerve wracking. So, and then use cases, right? Pretty simple. Find all the bad things or some of the bad things with the CLI. Like we mentioned, looping into your, ChatOps, ITSM, DevOps practices. If you want to open up Jira tickets, Azure DevOps board tickets, you want to open up a ServiceNow incident, you want to get hit on PagerDuty on Slack. I have different modules that take advantage of the Event Bridge integration. I do have an automated remediation framework as well. That's multi-account, multi-region, that'll fire from one central place. I've been meaning to redo that. It only supports 55 playbooks. I want to get a better kind of framework for that, but that's TBD. I have way too many irons in the fire. Like I said, if you just care about the compliance control aspect and that's it, you could also use it for that. If you want to do long-term archival, right? You just load that stuff into JSON or in a CSV, gzip it, throw it in an S3 bucket. That could be good if you want to do like time series analysis, right? Where every day you're running an ElectricEye scan, and then maybe you want to gamify it. Maybe you want to measure efficacy of a new tool or a new process, a new SCP, a new developer guardrail that you fired off, and then take a look at that. And then, in that same vein, creating BI reports, and we'll actually cover that in the demo, just a quick and dirty quick site report. There's two ways to do it, and then I'll walk through that, so we won't get there. And look, at the end of the day, it does come down to money. Not everybody could afford a multi-year $1 million deal with a ginormous CSPM vendor. And you might not care about the UX stuff because you like rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty, or maybe you just want to learn how to use QuickSight, learn how to use Tableau, send it in the Sentinel, whatever. They have better UX, but they don't have good coverage, at least not yet, until they're like, wait a second, it's Apache 2. We could steal that. Just kidding. So that's that. And we'll begin the demo portion. So let me alt tab, and hopefully I don't alt tab into something crazy. And I promise we're at 23 mark. We'll be able to get through this fast. I'll get to all the chats and QAs coming in. What screen am I at? All right, cool. So hopefully everybody could see this. We did do a test before we kicked this off. So I'm just here in Cloud9 and one of my old dev AWS accounts. I have no idea what's running here, but we're going to figure it out. I had to like create some buckets and stuff to use. And you can see kind of all my other projects. I'm working on a ransomware variant in Salsa 20. It's very exciting. So far, I've only managed to kill instances. So how do we get started? Right. So the easiest way is, this thing's in my way. Go away here. I make this go away. Damn. I'm like trying to get to a specific tab, but it's like covered by. Actually, we'll just do one of these. So before we get started, we'll just, kind of jump into the, oh, right, I can't do that. All right, we'll just jump into the repo. So it's easy to find. It's under ElectricEye. We're going to be in the fixes branch. So I meant to actually have this pushed up to mainline before this webinar, so I could do like a big announcement or whatever, PR. But that didn't work out. So if you want to look at, kind of this view, just make sure you go to the fixes thing. There's a lot of changes. I've reorganized how the documentation looks. I updated the architecture. I fixed a lot of old findings that either weren't mapped completely or missing compliance controls, were throwing errors. It was super chatty. I fixed the GovCloud, China, top secret region stuff. And then I'm also, like I mentioned, we did MongoDB, DocumentDB, and I'm working on Sentinel via Log Analytics Workspace integration. So you don't have to like set up an enterprise app and AD and give it a bunch of permissions and things like that. So pretty simple. And like I said, I try to go kind of overboard with documentation that no matter how you wanted to run it, if you want to run on Fargate and just forget about it, it just schedules and fires off. You want to deploy to Terraform, we support that. CloudFormation, we support that. And by we, I mean me and ElectricEye, because he's alive. You could run it locally via the CLI, and I think that's what most people do for now. You could see the different supported checks and services, all of them, and it just kind of goes through what's in there if you wanted to get kind of a grasp of what's supported. And then you can see the various add-on modules. ElectricEye Response is the kind of SOAR thing. ElectricEye Chat Ops and PagerDuty integration. Why I had them separate, I don't know, but that's where you get your teams, Slack and PagerDuty, and then ElectricEye Reports is kind of a self-contained module specifically meant to process the findings so you could get a per compliance view within QuickSight. There's a long FAQ that I actually moved to another section so it didn't make the documentation too long. And then there's a developer contribution guide if you ever wanted to contribute your own checks upstream. It gives you all the examples and whatnot, or maybe you just want to pattern your own project after this. So we'll just go and clone this real quick. No big deal. And then do that B fixes just to make sure we're in the proper place. Get ElectricEye, whoops. And then we are going to pip3 install our requirements.txt and just let that do its thing. All right, looks like I have everything. So this will install a couple like weird sort of libraries that you might not have. Click rather, the Psycop G2 binary, which is for PostgreSQL, and then also detect secrets from Yelp. I have a couple checks that'll like that'll go into user data, will go into various environment variables for other services to check it out. So the way they use it is just with Python. So there's a controller inside of it that wraps all the different classes. So it's a thing that you feed all the auditors to, load them into memory, and it gives you all your CLI options. So it's under EE auditor /controller.py. And then I think it's just regular help. Oh, no PyMongo. Okay. Yeah, it looks like I need to push another change because I clearly didn't have one of the things that I needed. So boom. And like I mentioned, you have all the options that if you just wanted to run ElectricEye on its own, you would just do this Python 3 E controller, and then it would just run through all the checks and it'll shoot them to the security hub. If you wanted to run a specific auditor, the docs aren't the greatest on this. So what you would do is actually go into like one of the Python files for it. So I know it's super small here on the left-hand side, but under EE auditor, under the auditor is AWS. So like Amazon _ CloudFront _ auditor.py, you would just do the name of that file except without the .py ending, and it will run every check inside of there. But what if you wanted to run like a specific check within it? Then you need to take the actual function name. So it's like def CloudFront _ active trusted signers check. This one will look for active trusted signers for your CloudFront distro. So you could run it that way as well, with the -C flag, and then just hit it that way. And then it'll tell you where it's running. I added a lot more write outs. So, yeah, that's my instance, and yeah, that's my account number. It'll tell you what ARN it's using. This was mostly done for troubleshooting, in case like you're trying to assume a role, or if you had this as part of a script for organizations, or you're trying to create an AWS profile in a different region. You can pass another profile name. So that's what it's there for, but I don't have any checks, and it's really just that simple to do. And like I said, if we wanted to just run the entire auditor, we could do -A. And in this case, we'll do, what do I actually have? We'll, run through the entire EBS. -A Amazon EBS auditor, and that'll run all the EBS checks. And then it'll send them to Security Hub. And then another thing that you can do if you wanted a quick way to look at it in Security Hub, you'll just pass the --create -insights flag. So that creates some Security Hub insights. So Security Hub insights are, they're pretty much saved searches, saved queries that you could look into. So we'll just hop into the console there, go to Security Hub. Obviously, you need to have it on. You don't need to turn config on. If you want, it'll save you a couple pennies a month. No big deal. And then, of course, this thing's going to take a lot of load, because why not? We're doing a demo, and you go into your insight section, and then you'll just type in ElectricEye, and there's a couple of them in there. The unfortunate part, though, is that it won't check if it already exists, so you could get multiple versions of it. So it'll let you know if you have active findings, all your immediated findings, and then Shodan. So I do integrate with Shodan. It's like the internet search engine. The idea behind there is it'll take all your public facing assets, right? So CloudFront, global accelerators, any public DMS, any public MQ brokers, EC2 instances, public RDS instances, and it'll try to resolve their IP, their host name, and then look it up against the Shodan API to tell you if it's indexed. And look, if it's indexed at Shodan, that means you already probably got hit a couple thousand times with automated scrapers and bots. You just didn't know it yet. GuardDuty will tell you things like that, but that's really why that's broken out there on the side. And then if you decide to use this view, right? So this is like, hey, I don't want to deal with QuickSight. I don't want to deal with Splunk, Sentinel. Like, just tell me what I got. The default view will organize it here by resource type. So I try to follow the convention that AWS, or that the Security Hub team has used, where it's like AWS and then what it is. Just think of it like if you know the CloudFormation, like type taxonomy, where it's like partition, : the service, : component. That's kind of the format it's in. So Dynamo tables, IAM users, EC2 volumes, things like that. And this could give you like just a quick at a glance look at what's wrong. And then you could pull into it. And this is kind of the part where people are like, I kind of hate this actually, because, I went kind of overboard with all the different checks. Like Lambda function should use code signing from AWS Signer. Is everybody going to do that? No. Are you going to fail these? Probably. Is that very annoying? Oh yeah, it's annoying. And that's, why it comes back to like, why use it, or like, why invest in a commercial tool? You're missing that context, right? Maybe you do want only a specific population of your Lambda functions to use Signer, or to be integrated with X-ray tracing, and so on. So it's the simplest way to do it. And like I said, you can run this thing anywhere. So we'll do, the same thing, except we'll do it in Cloud Shell. So those of you that don't know, of course, I lost connection. GCP's had like G-Cloud, the little Cloud Shell thing that pops up for quite a while, since 2017, 2018, at least from when I knew. And it took AWS a while to copy them, and finally they did. So you could just pop this little thing. I don't know if you could see this on my face on the way. You just hit this little Cloud Shell button next to the bell, and then you could get your own thing. It'll inherit whatever permissions that you have. So just keep that in mind. If like you don't have permissions to run all the different checks, you can't do it. But in that case, I have a policies folder with a JSON policy that'll give you everything that you need, and only what you need. So I won't just give you the security audit thing. So we'll do fixes again. The only difference here, and the reason why I escalated my privileges, is for whatever reason, when you try to install Python packages with pip, it throws an error, so you just have to run it escalated. I'm not sure why it does that, or maybe I'm just crazy. And then, same thing, pip 3 install -r requirements txt, and then it'll give you your root thing, and then it'll just run through and install everything for you. So this is like a fresh installation, how quick it would be, and then the requirements are used as well for if you're building a Docker container or something like that. And then I threw an error for some reason. Oh well, we're just gonna go ahead and do it. I'm just gonna leave this thing running in the background while we go back and use the normalized JSON output to mess around a little bit with QuickSight, controller, and why am I not in here? Because I spelled that wrong. You must specify a region. Just configure. Oh, wow. I don't even have. Oh, right. The CLI isn't installed. So let's just ignore that thing happened, and we'll go back to the environment that works. But typically, if there's nothing wrong, that would have worked. I tested it right before this, but it is what it is. So let's say, okay, that's great and all. I don't want it in Security Hub at all. Like, tell me what you support, right? So here's back in the help, and then we'll just do list options, even though it should be list outputs, but whatever. And that'll give you the different little codes that you could use. So Postgre, SecHub, JSON, CSV. JSON normalized is more of like a flattened, pre-selected format. The one bad thing about the AWS security finding format is that it has a ton of nested objects, nested arrays inside of it, especially with the resources. So every single resource has its own, sub schema, if you will, and trying to index that into, let's say, a log analytics workspace, it could only support 500 unique columns. So if you wanted to send this to Sentinel, you could very easily get over 500, depending on how many services you have. Elastic, QRadar, a couple others might hiccup on that. So that's why I have the flatten thing, and it also works really, really nicely for things like QuickSight. DOPS is disrupt ops. So like I mentioned, those folks helped a lot with a lot of the quality of life things. So you could send it there. And honestly, they have a better SOAR engine than I do. So that might be a reason to use there. And then DocDB. Postgres and DocDB support both DocumentDB, RDS, Aurora, or the regular ones. And then I have documentation about like what environment variables that you'll need. So in this case, we're just going to run -o, JSON _ normalized, and then --output -file. You don't have to put the .json at the end. So we'll do ElectricEye, what I actually want to call this thing, ElectricEye findings. Nice and simple. And then boom. So once it gets all that, it'll let you know all the different checks that it's running. I'll just run through them pretty quick. I'm like too zoomed in with the giant font that I got going on here. So that's why it's not scrolling. It's just changing there at the bottom. And then once that's done, we'll just upload that to S3 and then quickly create a QuickSight report. No big deal. I'm at 37 minutes, so we should be able to do that. But while this thing is spitting stuff out at me, let me take a look at the QA. Do I have any plans to extend to other providers? So probably not Azure, because their documentation, in my opinion, is pretty horrid. I had an old branch that I deleted for GCP. I'll probably do Google before I do Azure, honestly, even though it's not used as much. But I'll likely be adding other tool extensions into it. Like I want to add Nmap, their NSE engine, or well, Nmap scripting engine. So that was double redundant ATM machine. I'll probably add that before anything else. And then there's a couple other tweaks and modifications I want to meet. Do I have any prioritization? None at all. So I have different severities that I map things into based on kind of how bad it is, right? If you're missing encryption, if you have things public, if it's public reachable, but there's no prioritization outside of that. You're gonna snitch to AJ. Did you know what AICPA stood for? Yeah, hopefully nobody from Bike Tech was on for that one. And then is there a walkthrough for YouTube? I'm actually starting a YouTube channel soon, hence like all the Gucci gear with the headphones and the nice mic. Hopefully my audio is coming in clearly. So I'll be doing things like this. And I think this will probably be put up on YouTube by Sans as well. But I do plan on doing like a series with me not being so eccentric and weird about everything. So there's that. And all right, this is done. So let me just collapse all this stuff over here. ElectricEye findings normalized. Oh, that's not too bad. So this is what I'm talking about with the flattened schema. So the only thing that's a list in here is the compliance requirements. Unfortunately, QuickSight still doesn't support like unnesting these items. So we won't be able to like show the very cool QuickSight thing, but I do have the walkthrough in the ElectricEye reports section, but this is the flattened JSON for it. So we'll just upload this real quick to S3. Cheat codes over here. Does it not? I called that ElectricEye findings, right? Oh, normalized. All right, boom, there's that. And then we will create a manifest real quick. So this is what a QuickSight manifest looks like. Very, very simple. File locations, the URIs, you give it the actual URI. So if you went into S3, right? Or refresh this, you could just grab the object URL here, and then you would paste that into your file location. So it's a JSON file that you upload to an S3 bucket that points to another JSON file that you also have uploaded to your S3 bucket. And then under global upload settings, you just put format JSON. If you were using CSV, TSV, or something else, they have other like delimiter options for this. But it's just the easiest way, so you don't have to like manually upload. And then we will do findings manifest. And we got the manifest, and then I'll check that just to make sure that it's the right one. Can I hit open without it opening another thing? Sweet. All right, cool. And then all you do is take this object URL, take yourself to QuickSight. So QuickSight, for those of you that don't know, used to be its own company. AWS bought them a couple years ago. That's why they have their own little console experience. I love QuickSight. It's the best BI tool in the world ever. And I know BI tools, but I love QuickSight, honestly. It's super simple to use. It's really cheap and affordable. And AWS has really put a lot of effort into making it better and better. And I don't get paid for saying this, so I'm not sponsored by AWS or anything. But let me move my ugly face out of the way. So you go ahead and click new data set, and then you can see all the different areas that they support. Teradata, Snowflake, Presto, Maria, GitHub, you know, all the stuff. All that is way too cool for me. So I'm just going to put ElectricEye Sans, and then you just put in that URL and you connect. And then you go to edit and preview data. There are some issues though, right? Because QuickSight takes an opinionated view on how the thing should be formatted. And ISO 8601, which is a timestamp format that AWS Security Hub needs, isn't supported natively by QuickSight, which is a little annoying. So you either have to modify the date format, and I don't even have that with me. So I'm just going to turn these guys into strings real quick, just so it doesn't give you that issue. And if you've never messed with this QuickSight view before, you know that you have a data issue if nothing is loading here at the bottom. It wants to turn AWS account ID into decimals. Don't let it do that. Schema version, which has to be in the ASFF, wants to be a date. Don't let it do that. You can keep confidence down. And you see here, now turn that JSON into a tabular view. And then you just go ahead and hit publish and visualize. Very, very simple, you know, for just a quick and dirty look. It'll load up here at the top. So it uses Spice, which is super fast, paralleled, in-memory compute engine. Whoa, that's a mouthful. I guess it's Redis underneath. I don't know what it is, to be honest. But that's what they have. And then I'll let you know once everything's good, 100% success. And then you could start plotting your visuals, right? So we'll just go with a nice little bar chart here. And I don't know, what are we going to do? We'll do values IDs, count distinct, just in case for some reason I had duplicate IDs, which you can't because IDs are mutable. And then x-axis, let's go with like, I don't know, resource type. And then group color by compliance status. So boom, very simple. If you just wanted to see a quick visualization. And look, I mean, this is no different than you're getting in a very expensive CSPM tool. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to give you bar charts. It's going to give you trends, and it'll give you pretty colors. Here, we'll make this one pink, and we'll make the past, oh, I don't know, this weird color blue, just for, for the cotton candy effect. You can make this a stack chart, because stack charts are awesome, and you could just play around with it, right? If you just wanted to present. So again, let's say, you're just having a project, or you want to kind of see where you're at. You want to see where your, risks, quote unquote, lie, or where, all your misconfigurations are focused in. You could do that. You could mess with pivot tables and things like that. But that's really it as far as like this kind of haphazard demo. So I appreciate all you sticking with me for that. Real quick, like I said, the documentation, just let it do the talking. It's much better. And then the YouTube stuff will come. So I'll stop sharing and I'll pop back open to the Q&A. Let's see, can we add support for CIS benchmarks? So yes, I want to do that. But here's the one limitation. So the field that I had the stuff, and I don't know if you remember from that nested JSON under related requirements. So that related requirements array supports up to 32 strings in Security Hub. Ideally, I would like it to support more than that. So that's why I didn't do too many. I would love to do CIS, NYDFS, and high trust as well, or maybe just a HIPAA security and privacy rule. But it's really, that's the limitation right now, is that upper limit. So that's why I didn't want to shove too many in there. And that's also why I didn't aggressively map. But that could be something I could play around with, maybe as a supplement, maybe hiding it in another field if it doesn't make it look too crazy. I've been playing around with mapping back in a MITRE attack, saying like, hey, here's a tactic that might, be associated with this misconfiguration. And it's like the same issue there. So that's a good idea though. And HTML report, no. I know that Tony's does. That's something I'm not really good at, is messing with like those ANSI to HTML libraries and stuff like that. But if you know how to do that, definitely would appreciate a PR, but I'll add it to kind of like the roadmap of things that I want to do as far as outputs. I just don't want to get too crazy, because again, that requirements TXT, I don't want it to get super bloated because of the container, right? And I love making multi-layered Alpine containers as small as humanly possible. So that's why I did away with the Parquet output, because PyArrow is massive and putting in Alpine sucks, and HTML and things like that. But cool, I think, yeah, let me just answer these live. All right, that looks like that. And then let me hit the chat thing here and see. Oh, that's all Carol's things. All right, well, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. And if not, I guess we'll just pause for a minute and then I'll hand it back to you, Carol, so we could let all these folks get out of here early if nobody has any other questions.
All right.
Arpel, my man.
He said, great job. I guess that's everything. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan, for your great presentation, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.
Take care, everybody. Have a great one.